Well, hello everyone. You have right here. I'm talking about for logo designs, right here of knowing about whenever it comes to understanding about the disability, right? But then also whenever it comes to about our parents, and you want to know too is that if it's going to be maybe photo photography, or if it's going to be capturing any other sorts of special moments, right? But a lot of times it sure seems that way, is to where that that every time you do think about that and 102 is to where that I'm sure most of us have heard that so far saying is to where that you miss the old days just because of the fact that you miss doing this with your parents, or you used to do this with your mom, and you used to do this with your dad and all that. But you see right here that this right here is a sketch right here of this right here will be an example right here of both mom and dad right here. And you see right here, if we look real closely right here, and whenever I was working on this, I was just thinking too that this right here, I'm like, yeah, an infant, pushing an infant around along with holding a child's hand. And most parents might even say that companies are going to look at that as like a source of logo design. And, for any source of logo in year 102, that really, what does that really tell, all of us? And whenever we do think about it that way, to where that whenever we're talking about, parents holding a child's hand along with pushing a child around in the stroller right here. And at 102 is that when we do think about that, and we're thinking is toward that is it going to kind of remind you just a little bit of a story to where that one time whenever you were going to the festival, as a family, you were going to this one event or this one festival, and you were just thinking as to where that if you have a young infant in a stroller or something like that, then people might say is to where that the way you look at that right there is that you go ahead and you would have put together a logo design showing a little kid pushing a little kid around in a stroller. And so you're want to know too that whenever you're talking about pushing a kid around in the stroller, but then it could also be about as to where that kid, of course, is going to grow up and knowing that they're going to go ahead and look at those photographs in 102. That like most kids will say is to where you look at a lot of those moments in those photographs, and 102 that can you really remember a lot of those events, a lot of those things that you did with your mom and dad? And so it's like so each time you do think about that in your 102 anything that you may have anything that you may have missed from the time from whenever you were going to those events or anything like that. But I thought I'd go ahead and talk about right there, just knowing that this sketch right here is supposed to be an example of something I was working on based on a fun, based on a festival. And so whenever I was working on this, I was just thinking as to where you want to go ahead and include that in this project right here, just so that we can show everybody here. And you see this right here, so this right here was supposed to be an example right here of a mom and dad right here, but it's like you might even want to know too that you go ahead and start these conversations with your mom and dad in 102s to where the first thing that you're gonna maybe mention is to where you miss the good old times. You miss the good old times whenever you were having these conversations with mommy and daddy, and of course whenever you were having these discussions with your brother and your sister, right? It's like you're talking about for every given voice is a given choice right here. But you talk about right here, talk about for questions right here. So it sure seems that way that everybody might even want to know too is to where that whenever you do have these conversations with your parents or anybody that you're going to be talking to, and you want to know too is to where that the first thing that you're going to maybe say during that conversation is to where I miss talking, and like hello, I miss I miss having these conversations with you and all that. So it's like, so every time you do think about this, and you're one of twos toward it, somebody's gonna maybe start a conversation just by saying this toward it. Yeah, I miss talking or something like that, and talk about yeah, anything that you may have missed about anything in particular whenever it comes to events or anything else, any special events that that you were thinking about going to, and like yeah. So it's like so every time you do think about that, and you're always want to know too that a lot of things that you look forward to doing. For maybe if you do plan ahead of time just to go to something, let's just say, like everybody else that were 102, that if you had missed an event at some point, and you were thinking as toward, okay, yeah, anything that you may have missed during the time just because you were not able to attend that event just because that something came up on your schedule, or that maybe if you had gotten sick and you were not able to attend that event and all that. So it's like so every time you do think about that and you're 102 is toward that there's a way that you can go ahead and tell somebody that while you were there at that event that you were able to get some photographs and you were able to sketch out maybe a few you were able to create like some source of like you go ahead and sketch these pictures, but you're thinking is toward that so it's like anything that you can remember, or maybe anything that you can recall that you anything anything creative that you want to tell anybody whenever it comes to understanding about whenever you're trying to put together right here is this memory right here, and so a lot of times it's like that every time you think about drawing something, and the thing is toward okay, that if somebody were to look at this right here is like any sort of design for like what you call like for like a logo design right here, and every time you think about any sort of logo design right here, and you're worried toward how do we really explain whenever it comes to understanding about that whenever you do miss talking to somebody, and maybe anything that you miss talking to your mom and miss talking to your dad about or anything like that, like everybody said, I remember you holding the child's hand while you were at that festival, or pushing a child around in a stroller, while you were going. So it's like but the first thing that maybe a child would maybe say is toward that you were asleep in the stroller. You were sleeping in the stroller during the time that you were going to this event right here. So like everybody might say is toward that you went to this event those couple years ago, and you brought that way, like everybody might even thinking too, is to where you look at some of these photographs and you're want to know too that that was that's you right there. I was pushing you around in the stroller during the time when we went to this festival, and we went walking around and did some sightseeing and all that, and we were able to push you around in that stroller, and I was able to hold your sister's hand. You just by myself. So in case if anybody may ask me is toward why do you think that this right here would maybe look good for any source of logo design right here? So every time you think about that, like 102, that you're talking about for a logo design, anything that you may have missed whenever it comes to understanding about trying to piece together any source of memory or anything that for what you would think about anything that you were thinking about during the time, and so it sure seems that way, that every time you do think about that and you go ahead and draw out some examples right here in 102, really, what is that really going to remind you of whenever you do draw out the details right there? And people might say toward it's going to remind you a lot of mom and dad right there. Mom and dad right there. You with mom and dad, and then they were pushing your brother, and they were pushing they were holding your sister's hand right there, and So if we see this right here, so this right here was supposed to be the example right here of a logo design, and in year 102 you include mom and dad right here, along with holding the child's hand right here. So you're thinking is sort of, why do you think that you would want to include you include that on any sorts of advertisements or any sorts of logo design? And like people might say that, yeah, that you go ahead and start the conversation just by as to where yeah, you have a child right here, you got the parent holding the child's hand right there, and then you got that mom and dad right there, and then you got right there is the child, you got right there is the baby right there. And to me, that right there would maybe remind me just a little bit of like for an insurance page right there, to where you go ahead and tell everybody that if you have not experienced to where that if you've gone to any events that you do go to or any festivals that you do go to, talk about for stay together. Stay together, and whenever you're going to be walking around through that park and all that in 102, that for stay together, and then the stay together basically needs right here, and so every time you do think about that, and you're always 102, you were drawing out the details right here, but then at the same time, that your 102 is toward you were really too young to remember, or maybe that you were really you were asleep during the time that event was going. So like everybody else might even say this, to where that when we do think about that, and 102 is toward whenever parents are going to be pushing their kids around in a stroller and then holding a child's hand right here, and you're warned toward it, really, what is that really supposed to tell you? What is that really supposed to explain to anybody about that? And if you were to use this as like for any sorts of logo design, what is that really supposed to tell anybody? Well, that pretty much means is toward it the things that you're trying to follow up with whenever it comes to that your parents at one time, your mom and dad brought you there to that carnival, that event at one point in time, but then you really you were very young whenever during the time that moment was recorded, right? So every time you do think about that, and you're 102, that's mom and dad right there, and people might think as toward that right there is supposed to be it's supposed to be like a photograph right here taken by the mom and dad right here, along with the toddler right here, but then with the child, like you have right here the mom holding the child's hand right here. So whenever you do think about that, then you're 102, so if you would actually put this together right here, is like for maybe for a logo design, and you're 102 people might even say toward that whenever you do look at images like this, it's going to remind you of something. And one of those reminders is maybe going to be is toward I remember, I do remember very well of going to that whenever the carnivals were going on, and I can remember going to those festivals whenever they were going on, and so it's like, do you miss the old days? Do you miss the good old days whenever it comes to going to places with your parents, and going to places with your with your uncle or anybody else that you used to go to these festivals with. And so it's like so every time you do think about that, and you're always 102, is that you were very young during the time whenever you were going to that event, or that you were just a child whenever you went to that event right here. So let's just say that everybody else might say that if you were to use this right here for an example for a logo right here, you would include this your portion of the drawing right here, to where you show right here the mom holding the child's hand right here. And why do you think that would be? Like everybody might say too, that whenever it comes to logo designs right here, whenever we talk about for any charities or anything like that, and you're warned toward for any charities or anything, why do you think that maybe a mom holding a child's hand would be included, whenever it comes to, showing, for anything, for what you call, for any importance of the matter, right? And so you're 102, yeah, a mom holding a child's, hand, like, just like that right there. And so it's like, yeah, it's all about the fact about stay together, right? And you're 102, yes, for stay together logos. And so half the time it sure seems that way to where that you may have heard that before, from your parents about stay together. But really, why do you think that you would need that for any source of logo design? And especially if we're talking about for advertising, and especially if we're talking about maybe for any source of insurance or anything like that. So every time you think about that, and you're thinking of sort, okay, yeah, stay together. And so it's like, yeah, stay together. And so if anybody has heard about that before, and you're 102, that yeah, for stay together, that when we do talk about understanding about stay together right here, and you're thinking as toward, yeah, stay together. So every time you think about that, then you're thinking as toward, yeah, why do you think that would be needed for any source of logo? And you're 102, that yeah, for if you were to actually draw out the details about that, 102, that yeah, stay together right here, and at 102, that yeah, stay together. And so if you were to actually design any source of logo for that, and you're thinking as toward, yeah, for stay together. And the first thing that you might think about is to where that, yeah, I miss the good old days. Or somebody might say is toward, yeah, that's going to remind you of a lot of things whenever you say stay together right here. Yeah, stay together. And stay together pretty much means that you stay together as a group, or while you're going to be working on something, and you 102, that yeah, if you're going to be getting together maybe in groups, or maybe going to any source of festival, and if you're going to be going there like for like a family tradition or something like that. And so it sure seems that way, that like everybody else might say that that if you were to actually picture in your mind about the parents right there, you got right there is the infant, the toddler right there being pushed around in a stroller right there, along with the child right there. You got there's a child right there. So when we think about that right there for like any source of logo design, yeah, you got right there's a child right there. So every time you think about that, and you're 102, that yeah, you got the infant toddler right there. That infant, by the way, might even say is toward, yeah, that you were there at one point in time, before, and like a lot of families might even say too that like anybody might even say that if they're going to be going to these events, and 102, that that was a long time ago, but there was one point in time to where you were there at that festival at one point in time. Your mom and dad brought you there at one point in time just to be able to do some sightseeing, or just to walk around, to go to that that festival, and you were just a baby. Yeah, you were just a baby during that time. And so it's like so every time you do think about that, and somebody's gonna maybe say is toward it, yeah, that you were just a baby during that time. But then whenever those babies grow up, and for sure that they're gonna maybe look back and look at some of those pictures in 102, that okay, yeah, I remember that, or yeah, I see that now. And so it's like so every time you do think about that, and you're always 102, that that yeah, why do you think that while you're working on something, whenever you sketch out the details, why is it really going to remind you of anything in particular? And people might say it's where it's all about kind of like brainstorming, to where that's just how your memories connect, right? You start drawing out the details, and you might think it's toward, yeah, that your mom and dad right there, that looks just like mom and dad right there along with the child right there, and yeah, you even know that you want to know too where those photographs were, but if you actually sketch out the details right there, and want to know too that yeah, that you remember taking the photograph. You remember taking that photograph, and you remember very well of yeah, it reminds you of those certain moments in time. So really, why would anybody really want to look at, like, think about this as for like a logo design right here? And everybody might say is toward a yeah, that whenever you think about a parent holding a child's hand, I guess that's supposed to represent, for support, right? For any sorts of support or for charities or anything like that. But every time you do think about that, and you want to know too, is toward it, the first thing that you're going to be thinking about is that, yeah, I miss the good old days, Yeah, I miss those good old days whenever I was with mommy and I was with daddy during the time, and that is why it seems like that, yeah, that you were asleep during the time whenever you were in the stroller, that yeah, you were asleep during the time, or yeah, we were with big sister right there during the time, we were with big brother, and so it's like, yeah, so if you were to actually think about this and want to know to the, yeah, parents holding a child's hand right here, and do you think that maybe that anybody might say that that would look great maybe for a home page, like if you want to use it for like a home page, and maybe if you're doing like anything for like maybe for like fundraiser or something like that, or for charities, that you would use that as like something to represent for a logo design right there. You have right there as the parents, the mom and dad right there holding the child's hand right there, and pushing a young child around in a stroller like that. So every time you do think about that, you want to know to the, yeah, if you would actually use it for a logo design right there, and you're wondering toward why do you think that that would look good for a design? And tell everybody that, yeah, well, really, that everybody might say is toward it, that kind of draws a lot of the attention by anybody that is familiar with, yeah, that whenever it comes to getting their picture taken or something like that. So you think about these moments in time, and you want to know too that, yeah, that a lot of parents might even say that they can remember those good old days. They can remember, the strollers, those strollers that you used to use back in during the good old days, and plus holding the child's hand, and that's why it seems like that every time you do think about that, and 102 that yeah, you stay together right here, and so really, what is that really going to remind you of? And knowing about if you miss the good old days, right? By anybody says toward it, it's the type of greeting, right? Anybody might say is toward it, yeah, the type of greeting whenever you do start a conversation with somebody, for sure that they're going to maybe say that, yeah, I miss the good old days for sure. But it's like every time you do think about that, and you're thinking as toward it, that yeah, that you go ahead and sketch out the details right here for like a logo design right here, and you think as toward it, yeah, that's you, daddy, right there. Yeah, that's you, mommy, right there. That's you, daddy, and that was us right there. Yeah, we were there at the carnival. We were there at the fair, at that event, and you were having our picture taken, and so like every time you do think about that, and you're thinking as toward it, if you were able to follow up, well, I'm like, yeah, talk about for stay together right here, and so each time you do think about that, and people might say is toward it, yeah, that's talk about for stay together, but if you were to actually think about that, and let's just say that if you were to be, using this same idea right here for like any source of a charity, and like everybody might say is to where you go ahead and use something like that, and thinking is toward yeah, that if you want to go ahead and if it's supposed to be like maybe for an event going on in town or something like that, that you would use something like that, like a theme, something like that, where you have the mom and dad right there holding a child's hand right there. and the child will say is toward, yeah, that's that was that's you right there. That's me right there. You're holding mommy's hand while you were walking around there at the park or that event, and so it's like, yeah. So every time you do think about that, and really, what exactly is going through your mind whenever you do look at some of those photographs, and maybe if you do, if it's going to remind you of anything in particular. But it's like, yeah, if it's really going to remind you of, yeah, stay together. And so every time you do think about that 102, the yeah, when we talk about stay together right here, that means that, yeah, you got that the infant toddler right there, and then you got that the parent holding the child's hand right there. So every time you think about that, then you're warned toward it, yeah, whenever it comes to citizens and whenever it comes to disability, and you're thinking is toward it, yeah, that, how will we answer that question for the most of the time whenever it comes to, answering questions about about the parents. Your parents have questions about the children, and the children have questions about the parents, right? So every time you do think about that, and you're always 102, is toward it, yeah, you get into these conversations a lot of times. And you're always 102 that, the conversation's really going to start out with this is toward that, yeah, I remember that, or, yeah, well, I'm trying to remember, this, and I'm trying to remember that, and, somebody might say that, well, you were asleep during the time. Yeah, we were pushing you around in that stroller during it, whenever we had that stroller during the time, we were pushing you around whenever you were just a baby, that we were pushing you around in a stroller, and we were holding your sister's hand, while we were walking around during the time of that festival. And so whenever you do think about that, then people may even want to know too that, I don't remember all those details about that, and that's why it seems like, everybody might say that, toward, yeah, you may or may not remember all the details, but do you think that it would be very helpful to have a logo design? To do like a logo design right here to where it represents, for two parents, and you would go ahead and maybe do like maybe an infant to child right there, along with the parent holding the child's hand, and if you want to go ahead and write the year right there, you go and write the year down, and people might say that stay together right here. So if you were to actually talk about that, and people might say that, yeah, stay together right here. So if you would actually write the year down in 102 the year, you go ahead and write the year down, and you're warned toward a yeah, so whenever you do think about a lot of these photographs a lot of times, and you're thinking is toward a yeah, I don't remember that at all. I don't remember that, and so that's going to be maybe the first thing that you're going to be thinking about. Let's just say maybe if it's maybe a week later or a month later or sometime like that, that you go ahead and say, yeah, stay together right here. And so like let's just say that that the project that you were working on was titled "Stay Together" for 2022, and you were thinking that maybe that would right there would look good for for a logo design, and you were wondering that, well, why do you think that is the case? Why do you think that would look good right there for a logo? And a lot of parents would say is to where that right there brings back, like everybody might say that you look at an actual drawing of a painting right there, and that's going to probably bring back memories. And of course, like people might say that, yeah, I miss the good old days. I miss yeah, oh yeah, I remember that. And so it's like so just by looking at this drawing right here, all colored and all decorated and all that, is that really going to remind of anybody of a lot of those special memories? And somebody might say that, yeah, well, you probably do not remember that very well because you were just a baby during the time, during that time that picture was taken, that yeah, your parents were pushing you around in that stroller, and yeah, mommy was holding your sister's hand just like that, and so it's like, yeah, you got daddy, you got mommy and daddy right here, so it's like, yeah, the mommy and daddy would tell you that story to where that we went there one time, to do walking around there at that festival. And so it's like, yeah, so nowadays it's like we gotta think about this. It's like if it's supposed to be like any sort of logo for a website. Nowadays it seems like any sort of logo to represent for a website, right? Whenever it comes to charities, but still that. But whenever you do think about that, then the first title that you're going to maybe get to it is, Stay Together, for 2022 right here. And so every time I think about that, I'm always going to think it's toward, yeah, somebody for sure is maybe going to say is toward it, they miss the good old days whenever it comes to a lot of things that were going on and the things that they were trying to remember. And but still, but whenever you do think about that, and you're thinking is toward, yeah, that mommy and daddy were right there, and they were holding your hand while you were walking around, and yeah, you even went to the snack stand, to be able to go ahead and get some cotton candy, or to maybe to get an ice cream or something like that. So it's like everybody else might say that you go ahead and I'm like, yeah, but still, you talk about for the parents pushing an infant and toddler around, and so it's like whenever you do think about that, and your parents are maybe going to say is toward it, yeah, what did the doctor say whenever it comes to looking up about your disability and everything about your health and everything, and so every time you do think about that, 102, what was your medical diagnostics and all that, and so you got the doctors even asking you questions about that, and what do your parents have to say about that, and like anything, any sorts of feedback, right? So every time you do think about that, 102, that yeah, that the young, the daughter, that like, yeah, you were only 6, or maybe you were only 4 or 5, whenever you went to that event right there, and mommy was holding your hand, and she was actually pushing a stroller. Daddy was there, and he was pushing a stroller, and you actually went to that event those years ago, and you were able to walk around and play the games and all that, and then go to those events, and so it's like, yeah, so every time you do think about that, and you're thinking is toward it, that nowadays it's like it's used for to represent, for like an event, for like maybe for a Facebook page or maybe for Instagram or something like that. So every time you do think about that, you're always 102 that, yeah, you don't want to miss this event, or yeah, sign up today or something like that. So every time you think about that, you're 102 that, do you think that it would maybe help to go ahead and draw out the details right here? To go ahead and advertise, it's something like this, where you show right here the mom and dad right here holding their child and pushing an infant and toddler around in a stroller. So really, what does that really tell anybody? Well, I guess that really tells everybody that, based on the fact about stay together, that that yeah, if everybody who's invited to go to this event, and knowing that yeah, if you want to register to be able to go to that event, and these are the instructions on what you would need to follow just to be able to register, and also just to participate in that event. And so anybody might say is toward, yeah, that these are the instructions that you would need to follow just to be able to participate, right? But every time you think about that, and you're worried toward it, yeah, that you got mom and dad right there. But people might say is toward, yeah, that if we're talking about for a logo design right here, then maybe it would need to be recognized, right? So every time you think about that, and you're worried toward it, yeah, that you would maybe think that to where you can use this right here. You'll use a photograph or a sketch or some sort of design just like this right here. And let's just say that maybe if it's for babysitting or something like that, maybe if anybody who's looking to, if they want to post up any sorts of ads or something like that, maybe for a babysitting job or something like that, you would use a logo design right here, just knowing about, yeah, for how well the children are maintained whenever you're watching them or something like that. Are you pretty good with kids and watching them, and as well as your experience with taking good care of kids whenever it comes to child care and all that. So it's like so every time you think about that, yeah, for sure, looking at just an image like this is maybe going to remind you of a lot of things. Your parent holding a child's hand just like that, and so that's that's something to think about, especially. But anyway, but thanks for watching, everyone. Talk about for stay together right here. Thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.